This was a true warrior. His entire body was burned black, yet he still maintained a fighting posture. A veteran cleaning the battlefield saw that he was still alive and rushed him to a field hospital. Because almost his entire body was severely burned, the doctors concluded that the soldier would not survive more than 2 hours. But not only did this tank crewman survive, his injuries completely healed in just 3 days. This incident quickly drew the attention of higher command, but the tank crewman had lost his memory. Based on documents left inside the tank, the officers learned that the soldier's name was Ivan, a man who had received multiple honors as an outstanding tank crewman. Ivan arrived at the front line by train and saw countless destroyed tanks being transported back. He stopped in front of one tank, gently touching it while murmuring something. At that moment, a passing officer noticed him. Ivan told the officer that this tank had been destroyed by the White Tiger. The officer asked him for an explanation, but Ivan said he could communicate with tanks. However, the adjutant beside them told the officer that he had also heard legends of the White Tiger, that it would suddenly appear in every battle, destroy all Soviet tanks, and then vanish without a trace. High command ordered that the White Tiger be destroyed at any cost. Thus, a modified T-34 tank was created. It had thicker armor and a larger caliber gun. After the tank crew was confirmed, news came again from the front line that the White Tiger had reappeared. Looking at the tanks that had been pierced through, Ivan concluded that the White Tiger was hiding deep in the forest. He soon came up with a plan to use a scrapped tank as bait to lure the White Tiger out. The soldiers drove the tank into a muddy pit, then covered it with branches to conceal it. After hiding the tank, they sent out another tank as bait, deliberately making a huge amount of noise to lure out the German White Tiger. This legendary German tank had already destroyed hundreds of Soviet T-34s. Before long, the White Tiger rolled out of the forest. When the Soviet captain saw it, he froze in fear. This tank completely outclassed the T-34. The White Tiger fired a single shot at the decoy tank, instantly destroying it, leaving it no chance to fight back. After scoring the kill, the White Tiger prepared to withdraw. At that moment, the T-34 hidden in the mud pit charged out, quickly adjusting its gun and locking onto the White Tiger's position. The gunner immediately loaded a shell and fired at the Tiger, but the White Tiger's armor was simply too thick. The shot failed to cause any real damage. Just as the Tiger was about to counterattack, Ivan urgently ordered the tank to hide along the side of the destroyed decoy tank. Even so, they were still spotted by the White Tiger. The Tiger then launched a ferocious assault. Seeing that the wrecked decoy tank was about to be penetrated, Ivan quickly ordered the driver to reverse and attack the Tiger's weakest point. However, once the T-34 rushed out, they discovered that the Tiger tank had vanished. The gunner searched through the viewing port for a long time, yet couldn't find any trace of it. With no other choice, Ivan ordered the gunner to risk his life and open the hatch to observe the surroundings. The gunner stuck his head out, unaware that the White Tiger had already appeared right behind them. The soldier stuck his head out and quickly scanned the surroundings. Seeing nothing unusual, he immediately slammed the hatch shut. The gunner returned to the fighting compartment and told Ivan, the tank commander, that the White Tiger had already left. But in the very next second, the White Tiger blasted the T-34 into a pile of scrap metal. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Once again, the White Tiger vanished and disappeared without a trace. Based on the tracks left by the retreating Tiger, the Soviet commander discovered that it had disappeared in a stretch of swamp. He concluded that the White Tiger must have sunk into the marsh. But Ivan told the commander that the god of tanks had spoken to him. The White Tiger would definitely attack again. Soon after, the Soviet command ordered a general offensive. Dozens of tanks prepared to charge the German positions. At that very moment, the White Tiger appeared once more. In just 5 minutes, it destroyed more than a dozen Soviet tanks. As the White Tiger prepared to withdraw, Ivan drove his T-34 in hot pursuit, chasing it all the way to the outskirts of a village. There, the White Tiger disappeared again. Ivan immediately ordered the tank to turn around, and sure enough, the White Tiger was right behind them. It fired a shell at the T-34. Ivan quickly commanded the tank to drive into a nearby wooden house, using the structure as cover to finish loading a shell. One shot destroyed the Tiger's turret, instantly stripping it of its combat capability. With no choice, the White Tiger was forced to retreat. Ivan wanted to continue the pursuit, but the gun barrel suddenly exploded. All he could do was watch the White Tiger slowly disappear from sight. It was the closest he had ever come to destroying it. After this battle, the White Tiger was never seen again. In order to stop the Soviet counterattack, the German commander ordered the oil depot to be destroyed, trying to block them at the Volga River. But the Soviet army continued to charge forward. Countless soldiers, in their final moments, rushed toward German positions and perished together with the enemy. Under such psychological pressure, the German defenses began to collapse. To curb the Soviet offensive, the Germans dispatched aircraft to strafe the soldiers attempting to cross the river. Soviet casualties were extremely heavy, and the river crossing plan completely failed. The surviving soldiers fought fiercely with German troops inside a ruined building, only realizing at the brink of collapse that other comrades were still alive. Soviet soldiers from different units began to coordinate their efforts and successfully seized the building in one decisive action. After clearing out the enemy, they quickly contacted their superiors. The order from above was to defend the building to the death because it was the highest vantage point in Stalingrad. If the Germans retook the building, they would be able to cover all Soviet positions at the docks. Some surviving Soviet soldiers gradually gathered in the building. As the defensive fortifications were continuously strengthened, the German High Command finally took notice of the site. Inside the Soviet-held building, Pavlov led his men to search German corpses for ammunition, then threw the bodies directly out of the windows. By chance, this scene was witnessed by a German colonel. He could not tolerate his soldiers being so humiliated by the enemy. He immediately came up with a method of revenge. He ordered his men to round up all the civilians, then dragged a mother and her child from among them, nailed them tightly inside a wooden structure, and prepared to burn them alive. He ordered his men to round up all the civilians, then dragged a mother and her child from among them, nailed them tightly inside a wooden structure, and prepared to burn them alive. The Germans deliberately chose a spot visible to the Soviet troops, with the sole purpose of provoking them. To ease the suffering of the mother and child, Pavlov raised his rifle and shot them dead. He then detonated the flamethrower on a German soldier. With a roar of fury, everyone charged out of the building. The Germans' brutality completely drove the Soviets beyond reason. The German colonel launched a mortar attack. This assault ended in a bitter and costly Soviet victory. As word of their defense of the building spread, they became a spiritual symbol for the entire Soviet army. With morale restored, the Soviets prepared to cross the river again, but they were once more mercilessly crushed by German artillery fire. Shells streaked endlessly across the sky, yet the men inside the building could do nothing. They wanted to destroy the German ammunition depot, but it was on the other side of a wall. Unless artillery shells could curve in midair, it seemed impossible. The artillerymen said they could try anyway, so they rushed downstairs and set up a gun. The gunner adjusted the angle carefully and pressed the firing button. The ammunition depot exploded, and even the colonel was wounded. He ordered German forces to immediately retake the building. Seeing large numbers of German troops gathering, the men inside began preparing in advance. They smeared blood over their bodies and lay mixed in with the corpses. When the Germans entered the building, they seized the moment to launch a sudden counterattack. With clever disguise and the Germans' unfamiliarity with the interior, out of 30 men who entered, only 4 came out alive. However, they did manage to capture one Soviet soldier and later escorted him back to their camp.